Okay, so we're now going to move on to our next speaker, which is Eve. And Eve is going to talk about artful thinking pedagogies in online teaching. So over to you, Eve.
Yes, hello, thanks Phil, and thanks everyone for joining. Let me just get my screen up. Can you confirm that you can see it?
Yes, we can, yes.
Excellent, okay, great. So today I'm going to be talking to you about the visible thinking pedagogies in online teaching, which is what I've learned from my professional experience working as a museum educator. So we'll briefly explain what these pedagogies are, share with you real class examples where I've used them and adapted them to teaching online, and I'm going to be discussing the benefits as well. Now, I have worked as a museum educator for many years and received training and applied this pedagogies visible thinking, which is a research-based method. It has been developed in schools through classroom practice since 2002 and the project zero at Harvard University. And the aim is really to make thinking visible. So it's for students to identify, understand and utilize thinking dispositions, which you see already there on your screen. I'm going to return back to that. And how we do that, the three core practices, which is the thinking routines, documenting student thinking, and reflective professional practice. To date, we have 22 plus routines to choose from according to our needs, our objectives, and we can use them flexibly, combine them, and modify them. The characteristics of the VT, visible thinking routines, are that they correspond to and help develop specific thinking dispositions. And from the palette there, you can see, for example, observing and discussing, reasoning, exploring viewpoints, finding complexity, etc. So we can choose specific routines depending on which of these dispositions we want to develop further with the students. VT routines are suitable to any level, age, subject area, and variety of contexts. They can be carried out in group or individually. They're multimodal and tech-friendly, so we can use, they can be written, they can be spoken, we can use drawing, acting, and we can really adjust them from low-tech to high-tech, so pen and paper, worksheets, whiteboards, online quizzes. They're easy to teach, learn and remember because they have few steps, and they're very easy to repeat. The benefits is that they help students identify and better use learning methods that are more suitable to the types of learners they are. And of course, we know that there are different types of learners out there, visual, auditory, verbal, etc., as well as social and solitary. And in this way, students learn better, which is active learning, and are motivated to learn further, which is independent learning. And I hope this is clear. Students are motivated because they enjoy doing what they're good at. And they become better learners because they're actively involved in the learning than being passive recipients. And of course, we all know the learning pyramid there. So we're really trying to go towards the base of the pyramid, which is discussion groups, practice by doing, and teaching others. The routines offer time to slow down, socialize and develop valuable transferable skills. And they promote diversity, equality, collaboration, dialogue and respect. For example, we invite the equal involvement of students. We invite multiple interpretations and learning from one another as well. We draw from experience, which is what Jill mentioned as well, how important it is to draw from experience. We build on observation, use prior knowledge, but this is not a requirement to use prior knowledge. And all these do create a diverse and accessible learning environment. Now, what I learned from my professional training and work as a museum educator and I've implemented in higher education in my classroom is to be informative and flexible because we work with and we have to adjust to different levels, interests, knowledges, backgrounds and student capacities. I've learned to identify my students' needs and learning times very quickly, and it's important to do that as early on as possible, but also adjust as our students progress. And obviously treat my students with respect and engage and motivate and inspire them each time, which I think is the challenge when teaching online, to be very engaging each time. Okay, so now how this has been adjusted and implemented when teaching online. The first thing I've done is to restructure my seminars. So my seminars have two parts. One is a lecture recap lecture reading recap, and then the practical application. So in the lecture recap, what I do is a round table, and I ask every student to say at least something, either orally through the chat, so you also engage the more shy students. And the round table does motivate students to speak more, but I do share my screen if a student asks for an image from the lecture, or I make an internet search, for example, if they require it. During the reading recap, I do switch to my PowerPoint presentation for a more in-depth discussion, and I use codes and questions to get everyone engaged. And the practical application is where I adjust the VT routines and exercises, and is what I'm going to show you now in a minute. And I'm going to show it to you as I show it to my students. So the first routine I use is question time. So I ask students to write in the chat 3 questions for one of these images. So first I show them this, then this, and then this. And the benefits of this, that it's a very easy and accessible exercise for first-time learners. I did this with my first-year undergrads. It's an informal way of engaging them and allows everyone time to participate. You also encourage them to participate and to speak. And importantly, it's a way for us to learn more about our students and assess their knowledge. And in terms of implementation, I would address the questions. I wouldn't answer them. I would address them though. And I use this to introduce relevant subject concepts. For example, in our case, how artworks participate in their understanding and how the nature of our questions define our method of analysis. The second routine I use is See, Think, Wonder, which is the most basic visual thinking routine. And I would ask students to say out loud things they see, think and wonder about this painting. And I would directly write their answers right there on the slide on the screen. And the benefits of this is engaging different types of learners, giving the opportunity to students to explore, but also engage their imagination and their curiosity. And in terms of implementation, this is a useful way to delve deeper into an artwork. For example, this one is very important, but also it's a very good way to learn, for students to learn to apply specific methods of analysis. And in this case, it was Panofsky's 3-step method that more or less maps out onto this exercise. And the result is basically to make the application of theory more accessible. The third routine I would use is give titles. The original name is headlines, if you look it up, but I changed the name so students can understand it. So ask them to give a title for each of these images through the chat. And the benefit is students would use their existing knowledge. I would encourage them to share their experiences, and this really fosters respect and diversity. And in terms of implementation, I would link what they would say to key concepts regarding interpretation, associations, and cultural references. And in this case, how Black art introduces alternative or diverse visual languages, references, and techniques. And the final example is circle of viewpoints. That's another routine, and I would do this in groups. So I would give a different viewpoint to different groups. In this
Sorry,
case,
just under 2 minutes, Eve.
Yeah, we did great. Yes, thanks. So in this case, point of view of the man, of the woman, and the enslaved person in the back. And I would ask students to discuss amongst them and then present their findings in class using breakout rooms. And the benefit is active learning, collaboration, dialogue, discussion, learning from one another, and really developing transferable skills such as public speaking, and of course reasoning with evidence, which is what we're trying to get towards in terms of critical thinking, which is the aim with our students. So the implementation here is that I would use student-generated content to introduce and further discuss concepts, issues, and methodologies. And in this case, in relation to my class, we will talk about colonization, the slave trade, and Eurocentrism, but also implement the equality, diversity, and inclusion framework that we have here in Kent. So to summarize and conclude, What I've shared with you today is different VT routines, their aims and characteristics. So they correspond to different thinking dispositions, and we can choose and adapt them depending on our subjects, depending what we want to do, and use different means to do so. We can make adjustments and implementations in online teaching, for example, oral, engage students orally or through the chat, roundtable discussions, image search, co-creation of PowerPoint presentations, group activities, and activities for different types of learners. And of course, the aim is to encourage active and independent learning, so help students understand how they learn and draw from experience and knowledge built on direct observation, activate imagination, and encourage curiosity. And most importantly, it's to lead by example. So we're actively cultivating a way of learning with others in and beyond the classroom. And in doing so, we have a dynamic approach to teaching and learning, identifying needs, adjusting methods, diversity of activities, including technologies, implementing professional experience and using feedback, which again we said is very, very important to do. And we develop effective learning environments, which is respect, understand, to exchange and collaborate. And all this is in accordance with the professional standard framework we have.
Thank you, Eve.
Thanks.
Wow, that was really good. Thank you very much. It's actually sparked quite a lot of discussion in the chat, which is great.
Oh goodness.
I can see one. Well, there's a number of questions. If I do the first one, then I'll pass over to my colleague Dan. So one question that came up was, have you found that students, sorry, this is coming from Adam Harding, by the way, have you found students prefer using chat or audio in roundtable discussions?
I don't know if it means like pre-recorded message audio or speaking orally. I would assume or like speaking orally, but it depends on the topic. So the same student could be encouraged would prefer to use the chat for certain activities, but speak orally for others. And it does depend obviously on the character and personality of a student, you know, if they're more shy, but it does depend on the topic as well. So I think it's important to offer them the opportunity to do either. And the other problem we have with online learning is that many students are at public libraries, for example, or in a place where they cannot speak out loud. So it's very important to always say that it's okay, just use the chat to do so.
That's a good point. I'm going to ask my colleague Dan Clark now if he has any other questions that he'd like to ask. I think we've got time for one more question.
Okay, thanks, Eve. There are a number of questions in here, but I think one of them is quite pertinent. I'm just going to pull this one out. It's from Mike Wald. And how do you address the needs of students with visual impairments?
Right, I just said the question. That's a very good question. I think, well, when you don't teach online, you can use the other senses, isn't it? You can use touch and smell. But I think with online, it would either be sound, or you have to describe and encourage them to engage orally. But I think there are exercises where, for example, circle of viewpoints is not so closely doesn't so closely depend on a visual analysis of what's up there. So, or drawing for experience or asking questions. So you can find routines that engage other parts of your brain beyond the visual, and use that to engage the students as well and start the dialogue. Because I think these are props to start discussion. So I think there's a number of ways you can spike that. And then when students get into discussion mode, I think everyone is going to feel more relaxed, that they don't have to rely on a visual input to do so.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Eve. And again, bang on time as well. So you get a gold star as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Can I ask something? Shall I just answer the questions from the chat, or how do you want us to do that?
Yeah, if you could answer any of the questions in the chat, that would be fantastic. I know everyone would really appreciate that. So thank you so much.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.